Prajnana Brahma, Ayamatma Brahma. These two Mahavakyas are the intermediary stages. So, as I mentioned yesterday, in this Chandogya Upanishad, the 6th chapter, which has got 16 Brahmanas or sections. From 8th section, 8th Brahmana to 16th section, Uddalaka repeats this instruction, Tattwamasi, 9 times. Sorry, repetition 8 times, but the first instruction is the one, then 8 repetitions. So every time when the teacher repeats this Tattwamasi, the student asks the teacher, please repeat this once more. Please teach me once more. So in the 8th section, 8th Brahmana, in the 7th mantra, the first instruction begins. Saya esha anima aidadatmimidam sarvam tas satyam sa atma tattvamasi swetagetu. This is the instruction. The meaning is that absolute subtle principle. In monotheistic terms, we can say the God whom you are seeking, you are searching for. It is within you, it is your own self. And it is this God, the Atman, that makes everything in this world itself. So all this world as that as itself, this Atman, that's the truth. And that is the Atman. That you are. This is the instruction. So, Saya Esha Anima Aidadatmimidam Sarvam. Anima means the subtle principle. That principle is what makes this world what it is, and it is the essence of this world, the Atman, that's the truth. And what is that truth? It is yourself. Now, if you read this translation, because no translation can do full justice to any ancient text. You are God, Tadyaya Atman, Aham Brahmasmi, I am God. Maybe it is the height of arrogance. Sometimes it can be interpreted in a very, very ridiculous way, and it is often done. It is even used to make fun of Advaita. I am Brahman, I am God. Vedanta doesn't tell you that this physical body is God. I mean, a person may have 6 feet, 300 pounds, who may get diabetes and hypertension, heartbreak, and all problems. And so I am God. If that person says the psychophysical mechanism, it is the height of ridiculousness and idiocy. That's not what Vedanta means. Behind this physical dimension of the human personality, behind this mental, intellectual dimension, there is something that transcends, that goes beyond the physical, the intellectual, the mental, which is imperishable. That reality is Atma. This physical body, which comes and goes, which is born, which lives for many years and dies, which eats food, breathes air, is only a vehicle, an instrument through which this Atman manifests. Before this physical body came into existence, and after it perishes also, this Atman remains. That's why this self is the absolute reality. It's not, I think it is not working all right.
Intermittently it just changes.
Okay, now I shall maybe, I think now it's okay. It's audible, I believe.
Yeah.
So, okay, now, what is the real meaning of the statement that you are the Atman and you are eternal, you are Satyam. Now in Vedantic philosophy, if you want to make a statement that this is true in the absolute sense of the term, there are 3-4 criteria by which you judge, by which you call a thing the absolute reality. One, as I mentioned yesterday, is the unchangeability. Something will remain the same without any change in the past, in the present and future. It is called Trikala Abhadhitatvam, or something that remains unchanged or unaffected by the change in time, in the past, present and future. The second criterion is Sadvikara Atitatvam. Now Vikara means change. Sat means six changes. Jayade, Asti, Vardhade, Viparinamade, Kshiyade, Vinasyati, or Nasyati. That which comes into existence, which will birth, exists, then grows, evolves, decays and dies out. So anything which is born is unreal. It may sound a bit ridiculous. Vedanta says, what you see with your eyes is not real. What is born is not real. And what is not seen with your eyes, what is not perceived with your mind, is the reality. And what is unborn is the reality. How do you explain this? When we use the word, well, I am perceiving, I am seeing, what we mean is, my 5 senses of perception and mind are involved in this process of cognition or perception. And whatever we perceive with the 5 senses and mind are objectified knowledge, which is verbalized, which you can call, explain, describe and define. For that very reason, it is an objective reality. It doesn't remain the same all the time. It is not absolutely unreal, but it is not absolutely real either. If it were absolutely unreal, you won't experience it. If it were absolutely real, then it will never change, never disappear. But all that you see and perceive with the senses and mind are subject to changes. So, they are not absolutely real, but they are not absolutely unreal either. They are only relative, which is called technically in Vedanta Maya or Mithya, or the relativity. That which is perceived when the absolute reality is perceived through the prism of time, space and causation. That is Nama, Rupa, Kala, Vyavahara, Buddhi, etc. All these are involved in this relativity. So, Uddhadaga says, beyond this physical body of yours, beyond this mind, there is one Atman which is eternal, which is your true nature. Once you realize that reality, then you identify yourself to be that absolute reality. Then you would not identify yourself with this physical body or this mind or the intellect, which all are subject to changes. So that's the meaning of the statement Tat Tumasi and Tat Satyam. You are that Atman. So this is the first statement. So when Uddhadaga made this statement, Swetaketu did not fully understand it, as many people do not understand. That's true. When you are told that you are God, if you interpret yourself, if you define yourself as this physical body, you naturally will be puzzled, embarrassed. But a Jivan Mukta, a spiritual seeker and advanced soul who has realized his transcendental spiritual dimension will not be puzzled. He will not understand by this statement that his physical body is Atman. Rather, it is the absolute reality beyond this physical dimension, that is Atman. But Swetaketu was a boy, he didn't understand. So he says, Bhuya eva ma bhagavan vijñāpayatu. Please teach me once more. Enlighten me further. So, Uddalaka said, Tatha Soumya. All right. Iti Sahovacha. So, Uddalaka said, I shall certainly repeat. So, the first Upadesha, the first instruction comes in the 7th mantra of the 8th Brahmana or 8th section of the 6th chapter. After that, Uddalaka goes on repeating every time he takes a new illustration. He gives many examples. For example, in one context he says, you bring a piece of salt, you put in water, and next day you see the salt. Salt is not visible, but can you see the salt is not there? It has merged with the water. The previous evening, before you put that salt piece into the water, the salt piece was visible with your eyes, but now it has merged with the water. So if you want to know or understand salt, you have to see, you have to taste that water. Then by taste you understand salt is present there. So you have to change the method of your knowledge. Your eyes cannot perceive the salt, but your sense of taste can perceive it. Like that, at different stages, the absolute reality cannot be fully perceived. Just because we cannot see or taste or hear, you can't say it is not present there. So there are some instances, cases, where you need instruction from a teacher and also instruction from a scripture. So that is being illustrated in one of the most celebrated passages in the entire Vedic literature. It comes in the 14th Brahmana, that is 14th section of the 6th chapter. So actually this illustration comes as a response to the 8th request. So Shashtha Prasna, Yadi Evam Indriyehi Anupalabhyamanamapi Jaganmoolam Upalabdhum Shakyam Syad Yad Ubalambhanartham Kadartha Syad Anyatha Cha Agadartha Tasya Upalabdho Kaupaya Yadi. This is the 7th Upadesha. So, as a response to this, what's the question? The example is given there. See, there are sometimes, things that we cannot see, but still we will see that. We will see it is there. Many things may not be explicit and not apparently clear, but still we may have to learn from books or from teachers. So that example is given here in the 14th Brahmana. I shall try to expound this a bit elaborately because it has something, it's a very close connection with our everyday life. So the mantra begins like this: Yatha Soumya Purusham Gandharebhyo Abhyadhakshamatniya Tam Tataha Adhijane Visrajit Sa Yatha Tatra Prangva Udangva Dharangva Pratyangva Pradhmayida Abhinadhaksha Anitaha Abhinadhaksho Visristaka. This is an interesting story. So you have to think of maybe 3000 BC. So there was a land road between today's northwestern borders of India and Afghanistan. So a pilgrim had come to India, perhaps to learn the Vedas, to sit at the feet of the sages and sage. And after spending several years in India, he was going back to Gandhara Desha, which is Afghanistan. Gandhara Desha was the ancient Sanskrit name for what is now known as the Afghanistan territory. So he had spent long years in this country, and he was on his way back to Gandhara Desha, to his hometown. On the way, unfortunately, he was ambushed by a group of robbers. He was robbed of all his belongings. He was taken out of the main road to the thick of the forest, blindfolded, and he was tied to a tree with strong ropes. So we have to remember the pilgrim was going back to his hometown, and on the way he was ambushed by robbers, robbed of all his belongings, and blindfolded, was dragged into the thick forest and tied to a tree with ropes. After some time, the robbers left. He started crying and weeping, making loud noise. And a compassionate traveler who knew the route, who had gone from Gandhara Desha back to India and back and forth, heard his cries and noises. He went to the forest, untied the ropes, removed the blindfold, took him back to the main road, and told him, look here, now this is the road, you can take back to Gandhara Desha. This is the simple story. Story is very simple, but it has got a great message. Tasya yatha abhinahanam pramuchya prabhruyat edam disam Gandhara prajayiti gramat gramam prachan pandido medhavi Gandhara neva upasampadhyeti. Evameva iha acharyavan purusho veda tasya tabadeva chirami yavat na vimokshe atha sampatshe iti. This is the simple two mantras, first and second mantras of the 14th Brahmana. Now this is a story. Here in this analogy, the traveler himself is the spiritual seeker. We are all travelers. And who are the robbers who ambushed him? Our actions, both good actions and bad actions. In Vedanta, even good actions are a big advantage, because if you do good actions with a strong selfish desire, it may help you to avoid doing bad things, but then it cannot take you to the highest liberation, because the highest liberation is liberation from the cycle of life and death. And that's possible only when you realize your true nature, that you are the Atman. For that you have to transcend, go beyond Papa and also Punya, good and bad, Duntu Atita it is called. So in this context, the pilgrim is the Jiva, and the robbers are Papa and Punya. And what is this forest? This forest is the life journey. Our hometown is our true nature. So our true nature, we are in our true nature, not the physical body. The physical body is only foreign body. Our true nature is that we are the Atman. So freedom is our true nature, bondage is unnatural. Our true nature, our natural inheritance is the spiritual freedom. Spiritual freedom is not something that you get. It is something that you rediscover as our true nature. So when you realize God in Vedantic terminology, you are not getting a new knowledge. You are actually removing the wrong knowledge that we have got. But we are this body, we are this mind, we are this intellect, and so on. So Shankaracharya's commentary brings out all this in a very graphic language. Now, and what is the blindfold? See, the pilgrim was dragged and taken to the thick of the forests. And then what happened? The robbers blindfolded him. They the cloth that is used to blindfold is Maya. What is Maya? Desire for worldly pleasures. There are sometimes, peculiar manifestations of Maya. We want to do certain things. Many people want to lead spiritual life. Many people want to do good things. But they cannot bring themselves to doing that. Sometimes we happen, one day we take a decision, tomorrow onwards I shall meditate for 1 hour. But when the time comes, we try to postpone. A part of our mental system detaches itself from the main body and tries to create an artificial justification for not doing what we really want to do. So there is always an ongoing conflict between what we want to do and what we finally end up doing. The conflict between mind and intellect. We all live at the level of mind, not an intellect. We may take a strong decision to do certain things. We may have a strong desire to do certain things. But frequently, when we try to do that, the mind doesn't cooperate. All the emotions and samskaras and vrittis that we have accumulated in the past suddenly create a stumbling block. And this stumbling block takes the form of false justifications, procrastinations, sometimes rational excuses for not doing the right thing that we want to do. So there is always a conflict between mind and intellect. Conflict between what we want to do, really speaking, and what we eventually end up doing. This is an example of Maya. Maya is sometimes defined as the inexplicable. Mahadbhuta Anirvachaniya Rupa. That is Shankaracharya's own definition of Maya in the Vivekananda. So all our desires, accumulated desires, that we are ours, maybe many of us not even conscious or aware of their existence. All they constitute the Maya. And the forest is our own body, which we try to preserve. This is one of the miracles, one of the mysteries. Every day, if you observe, you know very well that this body is not going to stand for long. But then, next moment, we forget that great spiritual truth, that great piece of wisdom, and we bring ourselves back to the idea, this body is the only thing that we have got to safeguard, to look after. So this is the spiritual journey. Now in such a context, a teacher comes. So I shall read this bhashya. This bhashya is one of the great, one of the most celebrated pieces in the Vedantic philosophical literature, and also in a way it synthesizes both human effort and God's grace in a very harmonious way, a very harmonious spiritual way of blending the human effort part of spiritual life and the God's grace part of it. Yatha luki kasaume purusham yam kaschit gandharebhyo janapatebhyo abhinadhaksham vaddam vaddachakshusam aniya divyavarta taskara tam abhinadhakshmeva bruha. So we can, the thieves have already taken away all the wealth. That means our desire to achieve more and more, which manifest in different actions, have taken our mind in one direction and taking our route close to the path where the thieves are waiting to ambush the pilgrim. Now, suppose such a spiritual seeker is perfectly happy with this state of affairs. If you are all very happy with whatever we have got right now, the status quo, we won't be attending this retreat, actually speaking. So that's what the Bhashyakara says. See, when the pilgrim was taken away from the main road by these robbers, taken to the thick of the forest and tied to a tree, the pilgrim doesn't keep quiet. He struggles. The robbers have left, and the pilgrim is tied to a tree, blindfolded. He can't speak clearly, but still he makes some effort, he makes some struggle to make himself heard by some other travelers passes by. That's why a kind-hearted traveler listens to him, comes to him, and unties the rope and liberates him from the bondage. Similarly, in our life, when we feel a kind of divine discontentment, when we feel a need for higher spiritual urge, higher life, which may manifest in the form of reading books on mysticism. It may also manifest in the form of reading books on spirituality or music, higher art, higher music. All these are different manifestations of the human struggle to get out of the mundane, empirical forest. That's the meaning here. Because you are bound, so we make some effort to make ourselves heard. Just as this pilgrim was tied to a forest, makes a lot of noise, which catch the attention of some compassionate, kind-hearted travelers, who stop for some time and comes to his rescue. And that person is called Acharya here, the teacher. That's why Tasya Yatha Apinahanam Pramuchya Prabhruyat Edam Disam Gandhara, Edam Disa Gandhara, Edam Disam Prajayiti. So a compassionate traveler who listens to his wailing, cries, his noises, comes to him and liberates him from this bondage and takes him to the main road. That tells him, Edam Disam Gandhara, Edam Disam Praja. See, you want to get back to your hometown. This is the way, this is the road you have to take if you want to get back to your hometown. Like that the scriptures or the teacher tell us, see, there is a higher life, there is a higher spiritual pursuit, there is a higher meaning and higher relevance for human existence. Human life is not just meant for making the best of worldly pleasures and empirical enjoyments. Human life has got a higher meaning, higher relevance. So, if you follow this particular route, this track, you can get back to your hometown. What's a hometown? Our true spiritual nature. Maybe in monotheist Islam you can say that's the way to realize God. But then, a good teacher may give all the best instructions. A good book may also give you all the best ideas. But that's not enough. So, gramat gramam prichan pandido medhavi gandhara neva upasampadhyati. After listening to the teacher, or maybe after reading a great book from which we get a great idea, that's not enough. We must be able to exercise our own intelligence, our own wisdom, our own discerning mind. So, he should have cultivated, refined intelligence. So, that's why they could, Pandito Medhavi. Medha is purified intelligence, purified intellect. Intellect can be purified or its opposite. There are two types of intelligence according to Shastras. One kind of intelligence keeps you rotating along the wheel of skepticism and doubt. I've come across many. People will ask questions they themselves don't really bother about what questions they're asking. So they don't really bother about the answer they're getting either. So often this goes on repeating. This could be mechanical, harmless. But there are some others whose intelligence is rooted in intellectual arrogance, which keeps us rotating along this wheel of skepticism and doubt. The real Medha is Grandhadharana Shakti. Medha, that's a definition given by Shankaracharya. Grandhadharana Shakti means the ability to understand the true essence of meaning of Shastras, for which we need a cultivated, purified intelligence. That intelligence takes us beyond skepticism. I can give the example, many examples. If you read the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna, you come across many wonderful specimens. See, when a great learned person, intellect, like Swami Vivekananda, he was practically an agnostic. He was studying Scottish Church College, in Presidency College, and in those days students had to study a lot of utilitarianism and the British empiricism. Practically, philosophy was an important subject in those days. Mostly they dealt with systems of thought which made you think and doubt everything under the sun. So some kind of empty skepticism. So Vivekananda was actually an agnostic, but he had a sincere desire to know. And he was ready to be convinced if somebody could convince him. So he came to Sri Ramakrishna. And Sri Ramakrishna was very happy because Narendra, Vivekananda, was not willing to accept whatever he was told. He had the courage to ask questions. And Sri Ramakrishna was very happy to answer his questions. So you can find a cultivated intelligence helps us to go beyond skepticism and doubt. But an unrefined intelligence, rooted in intellectual arrogance, keeps you rotating along the wheel of skepticism, never allowing you to come out of it. So here the Upanishads say Grama Gramam Prichan. A real spiritual seeker should listen to the teacher, read the scriptures, and then he should continue his search. On his spiritual journey, he should discuss spiritual topics with others. He can read scriptures, he can take the help of great spiritual classics, and then his intelligence should be cultivated, Vedhavi. Such a person will eventually get back to his home. That's the idea behind. So there is a harmonious blending of instruction or help from a teacher, which is a manifestation of God's grace, and his own effort. If the spiritual seeker is blindly dependent upon his guru without making any effort on his own, then he won't reach his goal. He should make his own effort, because our effort makes us worthy of God's grace. So the grace worthiness which helps us to make proper use of God's grace comes as a result of our own effort. That's why, Gramantaram Prichan means constant search, constant struggle, constant effort to enrich ourselves. When we do that, then our own mind becomes the guru. That's Sri Ramakrishna in the Gospel says, at a particular stage, our own mind becomes the guru, the teacher. When we have sincere faith and when we make sincere effort, then our mind itself becomes purified enough. It takes us along the right track. So grama gramantaram prichan pandido medhavi gandharaneva upasampadyati. So as a result of the help from a teacher, which again is a manifestation of God's grace, and his own struggle, his own effort, he reaches the goal. Here, a few important points are elaborated here in this particular the commentary. Yathayam dushtando varnidha savishyebhyo gandharebhyo purusha taskarege abhinadhakshaka abhiveko digmudho asanaya pipasadiman. So the example is given. So we first of all, we should feel a kind of inner discontentment with the worldly, empirical things around us, which is called in Sanskrit language Nitya, Anitya, Vastu, Viveka, the first of the Sadhana Chatushtaya. So a strong desire for higher life, rooted in the perception, the higher reality. If we look around, we can see that everyday things are changing. Worldly things can never remain the same. So behind these changing things, there should be an eternal reality. Behind Anitya, there should be a Nitya entity. And we should uphold the Nitya and we should discard the Anitya. But for that, the first thing that is required is to cultivate a desire for higher life. Without a desire for higher life, we won't be able to feel the inner discontentment. When we are not happy with the existing state of things, then we go for something higher. In the Patanjali Yoga Sutra terminology, it is called Parinama Dukkha. The classic example is Buddha. See, Buddha was born a prince. He had a luxurious upbringing. He grew up in a palace. So he was 28 years old. When one day, while traveling the street, he had three visions. A sick person, a dead person, and an aged person. Old age, death, and sickness. Three types of dukkha. And then fourth vision was the face of the vision of a saint, a sage, whose face was completely free from misery, dukkha. So he wanted to find out a solution to this dukkha, the problem of old age, sickness, and death. Now Buddha was not worried about his own problems. It's called Parinama Dukkha. So Parinama Dukkha is the ability to feel inner discontentment even when everything is going on fine. So Vyasa in his commentary says, Yogina meva asnati. So this Parinama Dukkha, the higher Dukkha, it is not really sadness or grief as we understand. The word Dukkha in Monil Williams or Apte, you find Dukkha means grief or sorrow. It's not sorrow or grief. Because when we use the word sorrow, we know it has some element of misery, wretchedness. Parinama Dukkha or Dukkha as understood in the Theravada Buddhism is not grief or wretchedness. It is actually a desire, a striving for higher wisdom. That's what is called Chattvari Arya Satyani, the Four Noble Truths. So, the ability to look for something higher, even when we have no problems at the empirical level. We have got money, wealth, status, everything. Still, if you look for some higher value in life, looking for some higher meaning, higher relevance for life, it is called Parinama Dukkha. So that is what exactly what a spiritual seeker needs. In this particular analogy, the pilgrim is a spiritual seeker. He has got this body. This forest is the body. and he has got everything going on fine. Still, he feels a kind of voidness, a vacuum within. That is why in the Shankaracharya's commentary, there is a graphic description, He says, the Bhashyakara says, Evameva Sado Jagadatma Surupa Teja Vannadivayam Dekharanyam Vada Pitta Kabha Rudira Medo Mamsasti Majja Shukla Krimi Mudra Purishavat Siddoshnadi Aneka Dundasam Sukha Dukha. So this body is explained, Vada, Pitta, Kabha, all this, And so this body is healthy, no disease, everything fine, no need to go to hospital or anything. Still, if you feel, this body may be healthy, but this body is not the whole of him, my spirit, my personality. I got a wonderful home, but that's not the end of human existence. So it goes on, Bharya, Putra, Mitra, Pasu, Bandhavan, Bandhuadi, Dushta, Aneka, Vishaya, Trishna, Pasitaka. So you have got wife, children, wealth, bank balance, job, insurance, social security, everything. Everything going on fine. Still, can we feel an inner discontentment? That's the beginning of spiritual life. That's where spiritual life begins. So, it is called Parinama Dukkha. Punya Papadi Taskarehi Praveshidaka. Akam Amushya Putro Mamaidi Bantava Sukhyakam Dukhi Moda Pandido Dharmiko, etc. So, very interesting. Bandhuma, Jato, Murdo, Jirna, Papi, Putro, Mada. So, in this ordinary life, ordinary human beings who do not have this higher striving for spiritual wisdom, realization. He thinks, Aham Amushya Putra, I am his son, and I have so much wealth, I have all these friends, relatives. Now my son or daughter, all these people are dead and gone, I am completely lost. I have lost my money, I am completely cursed. Because those who do not have this higher striving, they are completely crushed when any of these empirical things, worldly things are affected. When they lose any of these things. On the other hand, those who have got the highest striving in spiritual life, they consider all these things, money, wealth, status, they're coming and going, as part of this game of human existence. Not that they will be indifferent or inactive or negligent in their duties and responsibilities. One may completely devote his whole attention to his duties and responsibilities. But at the same time, keeping the mind linked to a higher value. So when we are able to link our mind to a higher transcendental value, we don't start living in a utopian world. Our whole perception of the reality of human life undergoes a change. We will solve the problems, we will be very duty conscious, we will do our duty, but problems in this empirical life will not shake, will not shock us. Will not have a shocking impact in our life. Otherwise, what happens, If you look upon this empirical life, empirical things as the only things to be cared for, and when we look upon this empirical worldly pleasures as the only things as the only absolute things in this world, then what happens? The slightest problem will have a devastating effect in our mind. On the other hand, if we realize that life has got a higher meaning, this life is only a means to a higher goal, and if you are able to link ourselves to a higher transcendental spiritual ideal, then what happens? We are able to do our duty, But problems in life will not shock us anymore. So that is the advantage. And then we will realize the imperfection or the impermanence of all these things. Once we realize the impermanence, we won't run away from the world. Vedanta doesn't ask to run away from the world of realities. Vedanta only teaches us to take a higher perspective, look upon the whole problem of life from a higher perspective. So that's why Shankaracharya says, if we do not have a higher transcendental outlook, if we do not link ourselves to a higher ideal and live in the world, then what happens, aham amusya putro mamaide banthavaka sukhiyakam dukhi mudha pandido dharmigo bandhuman jado murdo jirna pavi putro me murdo dhanam me nashtam. I've lost my wealth, son has died, my body is sick. All these problems will have a crushing effect on the mind. Kame gidi kimme tranam. What is going to be my fate? What is going to happen to me? Who will protect me? So we will be always living in a state of misery and wretchedness. Because every single insignificant problem in worldly life becomes a big dilemma. On the other hand, even by living in this world, if we can link ourselves to a higher transcendental ideal, spiritual ideal, then we can live in this world, do our duty, but still remain unaffected by the fluctuations and changeable nature of the problems of this world, the situation of this world. That is the deeper message that the Bhashyakara, the commentator, presents before us. I think now we will have interaction. Perhaps we can interaction 20-25 minutes.
Swamiji, to increase the conviction after listening to this higher discourse, and even though after understanding intellectually, for sadhaka to go deeper and deeper to the extent that the present uncultured mind starts dwelling more on these things as opposed to avoiding the impact of the gross things around, to which it is tuned so much thickly. So the method would be just going over again and again.
Yeah. By keeping our mind acquainted with these ideas again and again. Many of these ideas may be just concepts or ideas to begin with. When we listen to this higher spiritual literature, when we read or listen to ideas, we may have a great attraction towards them. And for a minute, we may get fully convinced that there is a meaning in it. It's really possible. But then when we confront the reality of everyday obligations and professional compulsions, suddenly we feel we are living in a different world. That's true. But then, if you can look upon these ideas from the prism, through the angle of everyday life situations, then also you find its relevance. See, life itself can be a great teacher. Worldly life, the symbolical life with all its problems, can themselves prompt our mind towards these great ideas, if we take a different perspective. Because we should not look upon spiritual life and secular life as two disconnected compartments. Very often, most of the conflicts are rooted in this bifurcation. Sometimes we feel The spiritual life is one thing, spiritual philosophy is something different. And on the other hand, secular duties, responsibilities, professional compulsions are totally different. They should not be mixed up. This is a very wrong concept. So, if you look upon spiritual idea through the prism of worldly obligations, then you find these are all utopian ideas. But if you look at worldly obligations from a spiritual angle, you find this great meaning. There's a great meaning in it. People work hard and make money, still they become unhappy, which is a clear lesson. It shows that money and wealth cannot bring eternal happiness and joy. The joy or satisfaction that we get from the world is really the absence of misery. To give an example, when you get a good job, or somebody buys a good car, an increase in salary, it may give a satisfaction, but it's only temporary. So it is satisfaction only for some time. It becomes its opposite, dissatisfaction, after some time. On the other hand, we should aim at the real joy, which is not just the absence of misery. Joy itself, all joys, all experiences of happiness at the empirical worldly level are like a coin which only with two sides. You get something today and you lose it next day. So joy today and misery tomorrow. So it goes on changing. But then Lord Krishna in the Gita says the real joy goes beyond joy and its opposite. Sukham atintikam yattad buddhi grahim atindriyam. The sukha is the definition. What is the atintikam sukham? The transcendental higher joy. Higher joy is not related to getting something or gaining something. Rather, it is a joy by itself. So the best way to have real joy is to stop looking for enjoyment. The best way to escape unhappiness is to stop seeking happiness. Because there is no such thing as permanent happiness at the empirical level. It's just like looking for a coin to only one side is impossible. So that's why going beyond both is the only way to get atintikam sukham. That's what Lord Krishna says. Now, coming back to this illustration, for example, there are two ways of analyzing this illustration, this analogy. One, from the state of an ordinary spiritual seeker who has got a lot of problems, but he should make an effort. He should pray to God. He should make a constant effort for getting liberation, higher spirituality. This one. The other interpretation is, even when you have no problem at the empirical level, still if you feel an urge, a thirst for higher wisdom, it's called parinama dukkha. Which means we must cultivate a higher desire. That's the only way to get out of the clutches of lower desires. We must try to cultivate a higher goal. It's called parinama dukkha in the Patanjali Yoga Sutra. Parinama tapa samskara dukkha, like that. So, Vyasa's commentary says the best way for one to get satisfaction in spiritual life is to cultivate a higher desire, to cultivate inner discontentment, divine discontentment for worldly things, which means you will have a natural urge, striving for higher things. Striving for higher things is not mixed with misery. If you a poor man struggling hard to make money goes through a lot of agony, wretchedness. But a Buddha did not go through that kind of wretchedness. A Buddha had this problem. Buddha was faced with this problem. He didn't have any problem, really speaking, from an empirical, worldly point of view. He had a wonderful home to live in, palace, everything. But then he felt some emptiness, some kind of inner voidness when he saw sickness, death and old age. All these three problems. So he wanted an answer to this question. Now that spiritual search is not linked to any kind of feeling miserable, feeling wretchedness in a worldly sense. In fact, one great sign of a true spiritual seeker is joy. Santushta satatam yogi yatatma vidhanischeka. In the 12th chapter, in the Bhakti Yoga, Lord Krishna gives a list of the characteristics of an ideal devotee. So, santushta. So, if you are constantly praying, if you are... see, Sri Ramakrishna, for example, 12 years, he was praying, meditating in samadhi. He was not miserable. He was praying to Mother to give vision to him. But his striving for divine vision was not the miserable, wretched striving of a poor man for getting money, or a sick man to get cured. See, there is a great joy in spiritual striving. That is called parinama dukkha. The word dukkha is used in Patanjali's system, but dukkha there doesn't mean grief as it is understood in English language. See, in this context, the pilgrim who was traveling along, he was taking the road to Gandhara Desha. He was dragged away from the main road and he was tied to a tree and did not feel, I am perfectly happy. I am tied to this tree, I am blindfolded. I know I can't move, I am perfectly happy. He didn't feel that way. So also, if we can learn to feel unhappy with a lot of things in this world, I mean, we should learn to be unhappy with lower things. We should learn to be happy about higher things. To develop a desire, a thirst for higher things, noble values. That's the beginning of spiritual life. That is Nitya Anitya Vastu Viveka. So that's an idea for it. So, even if you can feel unhappy because you are not making enough progress in spiritual life, there is a joy in that unhappiness. It is different from the unhappiness you feel if you are trying to make money or get higher at the empirical level. You are always mixed with wretchedness, miser, feeling wretched, feeling miserable. There is no feeling of being miserable when you strive for something higher value. That's the idea behind it. It's called parinama dukkha. So this particular pilgrim should make a lot of noise. So then only he will catch the attention of a traveler who will come to his rescue. If you are perfectly happy, I have got a good job, I have got everything going on fine, it's like the pilgrim who is bound to the tree, blindfolded, can't move, I am very happy here, if you feel that way. Sri Ramakrishna says, the fishermen catching fish, some fish are very happy, they are caught in the net. They feel this is the best thing that I can have. But slowly it will be taken away from the net and be eaten up. But the fish thinks is a wonderful state of affairs. So the desire for higher things, even if that makes you restless, as a devotee becomes restless. You can read the lives of Mira or Mirabai and Tulsidas when he became a devotee, not before that, of course. All these great spiritual seekers. I can give an example, maybe one of the grandest examples as yesterday I referred to. One of my favorite quotations always from St. Teresa of Avila and the Weaver Pilgrim. In St. Teresa of Avila, see, there's an interesting illustration that gives a beautiful example of the harmony between human effort and God's grace. So here, the pilgrim makes a lot of noise. which corresponds to human efforts. Because listening to his cries and wailing sounds, the compassionate traveler, goes to him, rescues him from the bondage. But he should make an effort. Now, in the St. Teresa of Avila, there is one chapter where she takes the example from a farmer. He is trying to cultivate the field. The field is full of thorns, weeds, grass, stones, and all sorts of things. In fact, I have access only to English translation. So he has different ways of cultivating the field, irrigating the field, bringing water from a river, cutting a canal, maybe from a well, or by so many other ways, water mill. But then if it starts raining, then it's God's grace. Without any effort on his part, he can have this field well irrigated. But if it starts raining before he has removed these weeds and grass and stones from the field, then it won't have any benefit. So first of all, the farmer should wake up and make his own effort to remove the weeds and grass from the field. And then he should sow. Then it should be irrigated. So God's grace will not work unless we become grace-worthy. And we become grace-worthy through our effort. So in this particular analogy, the pilgrim makes a lot of noise, which is effort on his part. And then the traveler listens to his voice and comes to his rescue. That's what Sri Ramakrishna says in the Gospel. If you want to cross the river, if you just sit on one bank of the river without making any effort, you won't be able to get across the river. So you should, first of all, you should get up, give up your lethargy, then you should untie the boat, row the boat to the midstream, then only you will be able to make use of the wind that's blowing. Otherwise, not possible. So, in this particular illustration, see, Bhashya Shankaracharya says, that person should first of all feel a kind of dissatisfaction with his existing state of affairs. He should cry, and that's why Bhashyakara says, the commentator says, I am left alone in this forest. I am blindfolded. I can't move. I am tied to the tree. Then only somebody listening to this voice will come to the rescue. So our efforts makes our mind ready for making proper use of God's grace. Or for that matter, scriptural instructions or the teacher's instructions for that matter. So that is the illustration actually. That's why, Swetaketu could not understand the full meaning of the instruction given to him. Tattwamasi was the only instruction. He couldn't make anything out of it. But when it was repeated again and again, each time after each illustration, the teacher asked him to meditate, and slowly Swetaketu's mind also started evolving. As you said, when you read again, listen again, your mind also starts evolving. And as our mind starts evolving, our good karmas, good vasanas, good samskaras, accumulated samskaras and vasanas, they become more and more prominent, and the negative samskaras get weakened. And in direct proportion to this process, our mind becomes more and more capable of understanding the true meaning of scriptures. That's why Swetaketu had to listen 9 times. Any more discussions? Please.
Swami, I really appreciate your discourse, and I hadn't understand the meaning of dukkha myself for some time, but I appreciate your discussion of this. But what concerns me a lot is that I've been a devotee now for about 46 years, and since I first met Swami Tattwayananda, and I've been on the path, and I think I've been fairly sincere and really appreciated so much the whole Vedanta. And but there are times when my effort is not up to the challenge that I get from the seeming, the power of the samskara seems to be so strong, and that I guess accumulated over lifetimes, and it can get a bit discouraging. Although I do feel more inner joy now, I see that I've changed a lot. Still, it seems like a huge battle, and I don't know where I am sometimes. And I know the importance of holy company and reading and so on, but I agree. All I'm saying is that, and I know that Ramakrishna demonstrated his huge efforts to reach the goal so that we could understand what's involved, and he could do a lot of that for us in a way. It's very difficult, Swami, and I hate to admit that, but and also in the Gita it says, I think that even the wise person finds a loyal enemy in lust and I guess the other crocodiles. So I just want to make that comment and what you might think about that. Thank you.
Yes, the influence of negative samskaras. That's a big problem in life. The negative samskaras, unhelpful samskara, undesirable samskaras or impressions, maybe from this life or previous life. That's a real problem. So one important point to remember is we should never allow our mind to dwell on, to think about negative samskaras. Because each time when your mind focuses on negative samskaras, they get strengthened and they get more and more solid. They become, so they get strengthened. On the other hand, we should constantly think of positive samskaras. So, I can give an example. Of course, there's a bit of humor in it. So, one man who was slowly losing his hair, getting bald-headed. He tried to make fun of an Ayurvedic physician and went and asked him, "Do you have any medicine for this bald-headedness?" He said, "You should stop thinking of an egg." That's it. So, but then what happened, that person quickly became bald-headed. He lost all hair because he was every day trying to think of an egg so that he can avoid thinking of it. So the main problem is when we focus on our efforts to avoid negative samskaras, actually they get strengthened. So we should completely disregard negative samskaras, negative things, and try to constantly think of positive samskaras and positive ideas. If it's not easy to direct our mind towards certain ideas, that's true. But, just as mind influences action, actions also influence the mind. So if we can constantly keep ourselves physically engaged in good actions, any kind of service activity, any kind of unselfish service activity, that will have a purifying effect on the mind. This is not well recognized in modern psychology. Psychology fully recognizes the effect of mind on actions. When your mind is disturbed, everything becomes disturbed. But actions themselves independently will have an impact on the mind. And this is recognized only in Yoga Sutras, Vedanta, and also in Patanjali's system.
One of these actions could be japa.
Yama, niyama, you mean?
Japa could be one of them.
Yeah, japa is one. Even japa may be difficult for people who are highly disturbed. But that japa comes gradually at a later stage. Even physical activity, any kind of physical activity in service of higher pursuit, higher life. I can give the example. This is really working. You know why people come to Vedanta societies or spiritual organizations? You know why they come? When they engage themselves in these service activities, they get a kind of inner joy. But this is not scientifically analyzed. People come to Vedanta societies, or they go to churches or temples, synagogues, depending upon the tradition, and they try to do some good deeds, unselfish actions. Though they have to spend money and time and everything, energy, but still they do that, because by engaging in those activities, they get a kind of inner joy and inner fulfillment, which shows that actions have the direct impact on the mind. So, japa is of course very easy, japa is a quicker process. But those who are slightly disturbed in mind may find difficult to engage long time in japa. So, a much more easy method is trying to be engaged in some kind of service activity, unselfish pursuit of some activity. Slowly you find mind generates good samskaras. Mind generates good samskaras. You know, our antakarana, mental system, is a bundle of conflicting samskaras, good and bad. When the bad samskaras become dominant, we feel conflict. We feel disturbance when we try to do japa, because the negative samskaras are dominating, so we feel we are not able to concentrate, we are not able to focus on. So the only way out is to generate positive samskaras, so that the positive samskaras will be the majority. They will become the more dominant segment of this mental system, part of mental system. So, to keep ourselves engaged in some kind of service activity, noble pursuit, whatever may be that form of activity, will help us to generate healthy, good samskaras. That will reduce the conflicts, and that will make the mind cooperate with spiritual pursuits much more easily. Okay. So we will conclude now. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna